I'm on the beach here in Kelantan, which is East Malaysia. And it is around 6, 7 o'clock. So it's kind of becoming dusk. But here it kind of got dark early. And it's kind of interesting because I'm not really a beach person, but I'm here. And I don't find the beach or the beach life or things having to do with the beach particularly that attractive to me. As everybody knows, I basically like the mountains and the forests. But it's kind of interesting. The beach or the ocean, when I look out, it's kind of frightening in a way because it's kind of dark. It's endless, sort of to say, and it's huge. And it almost seems sometimes threatening, like, you know, it could just swallow you up. Anyways, the scene is nice. I wanted to share a little story about how I got to Malaysia. And why I came. And some of you may have heard the story, but I thought I'd share it with you again because the scene is so nice. You see, when I arrived in Gaden, it was 1988, January, February. I know because it was around the Tibetan Losar, or the Tibetan New Year's, and which is the biggest secular celebration and also religious. And when I first arrived in Gaden, oops, I went inside a wet sand. When I first arrived in Gaden, I entered the gate and I folded my hands. There's a gate that, you know, you go through when you're coming to Gaden. And then we stopped right in front of Saramji's house. So I got out of the taxi and I basically made 3 prostrations to my guru's house because I figured before I use the premises, before I live there, I wanted to show deep respect. So I entered the premises and there was a feeling of sanctity and peacefulness. And the crows and the birds were flying and the sun is shining and there's coconut trees and there's chiku trees and there's, you know, mango trees. But there was a feeling of emptiness because Saramji has already passed away by the time I arrived. Of course, I knew that. And his holy remains were already enshrined, partially inside, after cremation, inside the stupa, inside the ladrang. And I went in and it brought tears to my eyes and a lot of sadness because I felt that I got to India and to the monastery and to Gaden too late. You see, the reason I entered Sonarang was because Saramji in America asked me and said that if I want to, I can stay in his house. And he invited me to stay in his house, and I agreed. My teacher, whose name is one of my other teachers who I lived with in Los Angeles, was Geshe Rinpoche. And Geshe was from Gaden State also. And Gaden is divided into 11 houses according to region. So if you come from this region of Tibet, you will belong to this house, and that house would be called a Kungsan. And it's like a sorority house in the colleges, not exactly, but something like that. And each of it would have its own debate courtyard and its own prayer hall. And so Geshe Rinpoche belonged to Kloba Kungsan because he's from Chamdo. And Kyabje Saramji belonged to Pukang Kungsan because he's from Nangsang Kam area. In any case, when I joined Saramji's house, it was automatically agreed upon that I joined Pukang Kungsan. And that's what I did. I joined Pukang Kungsan and joined the monastery. And every day it was like pinching myself and living like in a dream because I just could not believe I was there. I just could not believe that I am in Saramji's house and I am in Gaden Monastery and I'm going to live here.
Rolling anything.
Okay, so when I got to Gaden, I actually really loved living in Sonlarang. And that was my home base. And I decided there and then basically that that's going to be my home. That's where I'm going to live. That's where I'm going to stay. And that's where I'm going to forever reside. And I even thought to myself, you know what? I'm even going to die there. I'm not ever going to leave. That's how happy I was in Gaden. That's how satisfied I was. And everything was very basic and primitive. You know, sometimes we wouldn't have electricity for a week, a day, maybe even a whole month. Sometimes we wouldn't have water, and we'd all have to go to the fields to pump water from a manual pump to take a bath or whatever. And our roofs all leaked, but I was okay with that. Because I didn't go to the monastery, I didn't go to India for comforts and luxury, but I went there because I wanted to give myself over to spiritual practice. So all those hardships, cultural, language, visas, finances, electricity, utilities, it was all very difficult, but at times I did get frustrated, but it was all right because, like I said, I went there for my spiritual practice and also to fulfill my commitment to Saramji because I told them that I'm going to go there. So as Gaden, Sonlarang was my home base for a while until my father built me a house. And I traveled to many parts of India, to holy places such as Leh Ladakh, as I mentioned earlier, to Dharamsala and to Sera, to Drepung, and many other monasteries and places in India, Varanasi. When I was in Bodh Gaya, which was really a very powerful place for me personally, because the tree in which Lord Buddha sat under and the place that Buddha sat under is still there. And even King Ashoka built a huge Mahabodhi stupa to commemorate the spot where Buddha became enlightened. And it was incredible because that was the very place where Buddha Shakyamuni himself became a fully enlightened being. That's exactly where he sat. That's where he meditated. That's where he contemplated. That's where he ultimately began everything that I am doing now. So that place had a direct connection to me because if Buddha didn't sit on that spot and Buddha didn't meditate under that tree and Buddha didn't become fully awakened on that very place, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. So that's kind of like a really direct and indirect effect on me. And I was in Bodh Gaya, and I stayed there for about a month. And I was on very limited funds, and I stayed at the Burmese temple hotel there, and it was like 50 rupees a day, which was very expensive. Okay, 50 rupees a day would be like 5 ringgit. 5 ringgit is like $1.50 US. And I would take a rickshaw every day over to the stupa, the Mahabodhi stupa. And you have to, the Mahabodhi stupa is like this. You enter this way, and then the tree is right behind. And then you circumambulate around the inner corridor, around the stupa. Then there's an outer corridor that you can circumambulate. And there's another outer one, and then there's a totally outer one that you can circumambulate. And so I went there every day to circumambulate around the stupa and to do my sadhanas. And then you can go inside the stupa. And inside the stupa there is a Buddha statue that is over 2,500 years old, made by a lady disciple of Buddha who actually saw his face. So she instructed her sons to make the statue the likeness of Lord Buddha. That's what she did. So actually she told the sons, carve it like this, make it like this, he looked like that, look like this. And the Buddha statue is said to resemble Buddha very, very much. So that statue is there. And I would go inside the Mahabodhi temple, the Mahabodhi stupa, and I would do my prayers in front of the Buddha. or I circumambulate outside or whatever. And it was just fantastic because this is the Holy Land. This is the holy place. This is the Buddhist pilgrimage. In any case, while I was there, I met up with some very interesting people. And a lot of people, from different countries. And some of them requested me to give talks and teachings, although I didn't want to, although I wasn't interested in it. And when I would travel in different parts of Bodh Gaya, sometimes I go to like the Mahakala caves. I'm sorry, the Mahakala caves or whatever. They would all follow me. And I met one particular monk. His name was Reverend Kun. He is a Tibetan monk, a monk of the Tibetan tradition from Malaysia. And we became friends because he was staying at the Burmese hotel, and he was already quite senior. He was already in his 60s, I would suppose, that time. And I was in my, mid-20s. And we became friends, and we talked. And we go to the stupa sometimes, or we go to eat sometimes nearby. And we started talking about Guru devotion, and I gave him a small talk on Guru devotion and my views and my thinking according to one particular text by Ashvaghosha. And he was very happy, and he was very grateful. And he said to me that, I really appreciate you giving me this teaching and this talk. I really, really appreciate it very much. And we exchanged contacts. And it was time for me to go back to the monastery. So when I went back to the monastery, he started writing to me, Reverend Kun. And I wrote back. And you have to understand, mail that time would take like a month, because we're in a little village. Sometimes the mail would get lost because we're in a little village. And so he'd write letters to me. I'd write letters back. And just kept in contact. And he wrote very well, very clearly. Very fluent in his writing. So he started asking me divination questions. Questions about this person or that person. Their illness or some problems they had. Sometimes possessions. And so I was doing divination for him with my teacher's permission. I got Khensa Rinpoche's permission. I was doing divination. And he was very grateful. Very, very grateful. And so I guess the divination had its results because he started asking for more. And it was around that time where there was a lot of influx of monks coming from Tibet. And they would basically walk across whatever province they were from in Tibet, and then walk over the Himalayan mountains and walk over to Nepal. And from Nepal, they walk to India, and they come to the monasteries to study. And there was a lot. And the monks were kind of like all sleeping outside. They were sleeping on verandas, not literally outside. I mean, the buildings had kind of a cover, like a veranda. They would sleep on the verandas. And there were a lot of snakes, and tuberculosis was very rampant. And the monsoon season was very hard because it would rain, like it's raining right now, non-stop, for days. And these monks literally had a mug or like a blanket, and that's all they had. So that was kind of interesting. A lot of monks were coming in from Tibet, and they were basically very poor. They had nothing, just the robes on their back and, a mug. Some not even that. And they came all the way down to Gaden to study because Gaden still has a full, rounded Dharma education where you can get a Plarambak degree. And it was just influx upon influx into all the 11 kamsins of Gaden Shartse Monastery. And this was happening in Drepung, and Gaden, and Sera, you name it. It was happening in Drepung Loseling, in Drepung Gomang. And Drepung Gomang even had a large influx of Mongolian monks from Mongolia who came to study also. And there was Sarah May and Sarah J and, nuns. They didn't come to the monastery, of course. And there's just no place to stay. And during the monsoon season, as I mentioned, it's very hard because the buildings would have verandas. And the verandas were, really places to study, meditate, kick back, relax, eat, enjoy the evening, enjoy the mornings because it's very beautiful in the village there. So the monks were sleeping on the verandas, And it's not one or two, I'm talking about hundreds in the different kamsans. And in the monastery, it's set up in such a way that the main monastery, Gaden, actually provides very simple food twice a day. And the kamsans are supposed to provide your staying places. And that's the setup of Gaden for the last 600 years. And if they don't have enough staying places for you, you basically camp in with one of the monks you make friends with, and there could be 6 or 7 monks in a very teeny room, you know? I mean, the monks and no one complained, but it was becoming a little unhealthy because in the monsoon, it's raining, it's hot, there's mosquitoes, snakes, and a lot of the monks were getting tuberculosis. So the monastery was at wit's end, and each of the kamsans, the head of the kamsans needed to arrange for a place to stay for the monks. And so Pogang Kamsan at that time had about 200 or 300 monks, about 250, 280, I would say close to 300 monks. And Lati Rinpoche, Sar Rinpoche, Khenso Jamba Yeshi Rinpoche, myself, we all belong to Pogang Kamsan because we come from the same region in Tibet. And well, there was a meeting, and I was invited to the meeting. And I knew it was something about the housing, and I didn't understand Tibetan that well, but enough to understand what's going on, because I was just relearning. And when I came to the meeting, Lati Rinpoche was on his throne, and then across from him on the other side was Khenso Rinpoche's throne. And then right next to Lati Rinpoche, they had a smaller throne, and that was for me to sit on. And then all the other monks and all the other Rinpoches around us. And Lati Rinpoche started the meeting that we need housing, we need space, we need people, we need facilities, we need toilets. It's unclean, it's unhygienic. And he turned around and looked at me and said, I recommend that you go abroad on a teaching tour and kind of raise funds to build a new building. And I kind of was taken aback because, there's no way I can do this. There's no way I can do this. And I've never taught officially. I never went on tour. I've spoken about Dharma with friends here and there casually, but actually get on the throne and, start talking to people and all that. I've never done that. And, I just arrived in Gaden just a few years back. So I told Lati Rinpoche very respectfully that I can't go and that I'm not the right person. And Lati Rinpoche said to me, no, you have to go. And I said, I don't even have good connections. I don't know where to go. He says, a place will manifest and you should go. And I'm like, I mean, Lati Rinpoche is one of my teachers, so I didn't want to oppose him, and I didn't want to be rude, and I didn't want to fight back or debate, but I really did not want to go, and I also absolutely did not feel qualified. And he says, you gotta go. And so I started debating with Lati Rinpoche in a respectful way, and Lati Rinpoche was laughing away. But at one point he was a little irritated with me because he said, look, I want you to go. Whatever you need to do outside of the monastery to teach Dharma or whatever, you're qualified to do. And I said to Lati Rinpoche, well, if it takes qualifications to go, Lati Rinpoche, you're like 1 million times more qualified than I am, and please you go. And Lati Rinpoche scolded me, and he said, in front of all the monks, none of the monks dare talk back to him. They respect him so much. And he scolded me, and he said, he pointed his finger at me, and he scolded me, and he said, oh, you're a little upstart. You shouldn't talk back like that. You shouldn't talk to me like that. You shouldn't debate like that with me. And I was like, sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I really don't feel qualified to go. I can barely read Tibetan. And he says, no, you have to go. And so the debate was going on back and forth. It was just me and Lati Rinpoche, and all the other senior lamas also dare not speak up for or against, because once Lati Rinpoche says do it, everybody listens because he's so well regarded. And all the monks were sitting there watching us debate back and forth, like all 300 of them. And by now I was like begging, please, I don't want to go. I mean it, I really did not want to go. So finally, I came up with an idea, and I thought I was quite clever. We have a monk or an oracle in Gaden, and he came from Tibet, and he's been taking trance of satrap in the monastery. He has his own quarters, he has his own chapel, he has his own place in the monastery. And Lati Rinpoche, Khenso Jambayi Rinpoche, and all the great masters and teachers from Drepung from time to time, from Losaling, from Jiangse, they all come and request to the protector to take trance, and he would speak. The protector would actually speak. So I said to Lati Rinpoche confidently that if you ask satrap for me to go, he's going to say no. So I said, if you can request for an audience for satrap to enter the oracle monk, and I can ask him directly whether it would be good for me to go or not. If satrap says to go, I'll go. If satrap says no, then I won't go. And you know what? Lati Rinpoche was like really happy. And I mean, he's very characteristic. He pointed his fingers at me again and he says, Dende yinda, dende yinbe, dende yinda. Meaning like, are you sure that's the way you want it? Are you sure that's it? Like, just like that? And I folded my hands and said, sure. I said, if satrap tells me to go, satrap is the protector of our monastery, and he's been taking trance in our oracles for hundreds of years. When one oracle passes away, another oracle arises, and he takes trance, and he talks to Ranisharti, gives advice to all the high lamas. This is just something that was happening from Tibet. Anyways, I said, yeah, if satrap says fine, then I'll do it. And Lati Rinpoche was laughing, and and I was thinking, what's so funny, So I thought, okay, to get an audience with satrap, it's going to be a few weeks because it's not easy, and he's going to say no because he is a protector, and he's going to, in his infinite wisdom and clairvoyance, little that I know, he's working together with Lati Rinpoche behind the scenes, is going to say no. I'm definitely not qualified. There's so many more qualified people than me. And you know what? I got a message. I got a message at my house that satrap is taking trance the next day, and I am to be there. And I was thinking, wow, that was super quick. So the next day, we went to satrap's chapel. We went to satrap's oracle's chapel and house, and I walked in, and we made the greetings, cut the offerings, and the monk that was there, he prepared himself. He wore his ceremonial clothes. He did his black tea, he did his prayers, and he sat on the throne. And then there was other monk assistants around, and they did the ritual of satrap, did the prayer of satrap. They invoked him. And as they invoked him, he started going to different stages of trance. He started going to different stages of trance. And I don't have any footage of that with me, but if you want to look at it, you can Google Nechung, and you can see the Dalai Lama in his palace in Dharamsala. And the monks invoking Nechung, and Nechung taking trance in the oracle monk there. It's the same process, so you can take a look. His Holiness does the same. Satrap entered, and we made black tea offerings to him directly. We made talk offerings, and then we offer kata. We request, and I asked him the question. If I go to Malaysia, because that's where my contact was, or if I go abroad, would it be successful in fulfilling the Kamsin or monastic monastery's wishes to build a house, raise funds? And satrap said to me that I should make a good motivation, and to serve the Sangha is an incredible honor, an incredible merit field. And he says that if I was to stay in meditation for one whole lifetime, in a cave. Really just go to a cave and stay in a cave and meditate for one whole lifetime, and just do 4 sessions a day. The merit that I would collect from meditating in a cave for one whole lifetime would be the same as if I had served the Sangha just once. And I was like, wow, what a shortcut. That's what he said. So if I served the Sangha once, that means if I provided the needs of the Sangha in Gaden once, just one time, that would be the same amount of merits as if I stayed in retreat my whole life. And I thought to myself, well, that's a pretty good bargain, because with all this merit, if I actually do my practice, I can gain some attainments. Because I don't have attainments, and I would like to gain attainments. And that's the whole point of doing the 4 mundros, or the 4 preliminary practices. 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 mandala offerings, 100,000 vajrasattva, 100,000 guru yoga, and optional 100,000 water offerings, and 100,000 tattas of Buddhas. So when you do those preliminary offerings, it's designed to purify your karma and to collect the merit so that when you enter into retreat, you will gain the result. So before you enter a Yamataka retreat or a Vajrayogini retreat or a Kala Chakra retreat, it is recommended you do those preliminary practices, 4 or 6, depending on which one you follow. And so, and it's designed to remove obstacles, because when you go into a tantric retreat immediately, there might not be results. Boy, it's getting hot in here. There might not be results. So what happens is you have to do preliminary retreats. And I thought to myself, okay, if I can collect this much merit, this would be my kind of preliminary retreat preliminary practice before I go into actual retreat. And Setrap continues saying, well, if you serve the Sangha this one time, not this one time, it will be equal the merit of staying in retreat your whole lifetime. And this is the Dharma protector of Gaden Shartse telling us this, And then he says, when you go to raise funds, whatever, if people need Dharma, you teach them the Dharma. If people need a blessing, you give them the blessing strings. We call that like a zhongwa. If people need advice, you give them advice. If they need divination, you do divination. This is Setrap talking to me. And he says, whatever it takes to benefit others, whatever it takes to relieve their suffering, whatever it takes to bring them to a better state of mind or happiness, you should do and commit, and you should have that kind of thinking to benefit them. If you do that, then I will help you. And when you go abroad, if you have any difficulties, you do black tea to me, and I will come very quickly to help you. That's what he said. And they wrote that all down. The oracle monk came out of trance. He sealed and signed it that it was accurate, and that was given to Lati Rinpoche. And guess what? I was summoned to Lati Rinpoche's house, and when I walked in, Lati Rinpoche characteristically pointed his fingers at me, at my face, and he says, and he was laughing and laughing and laughing. Yeah, I know. He's always laughing at me, but maybe I'm quite funny looking. But he was laughing and laughing and laughing, and he said, what did I tell you? That's what he said. Nghe lying, boss. He says, didn't I tell you? Nghe lying, boss. Didn't I tell you? And I'm like, I folded my hands. I said, yes, Lati Rinpoche, you are absolutely right. And it dawned on me at that moment. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't unhappy with Lati Rinpoche, but I wasn't happy about going. But it dawned on me that, if the Lama tells you to do something, the protectors follow it. That once you listen to your Lama and you believe in your Lama, you don't need to ask your Dharma protectors. You don't need to ask other people. Because once you ask your Lama, whatever the Lama tells you, if he's a real Lama, if he's a qualified Lama like Lati Rinpoche is, he will think things out according to the Dharma, logically, quickly, and he tells you. Why question it once you've accepted him as your guru? And I realized at that moment that it was silly of me to even demand to see the oracle and demand to see the protector, and that he would say something opposite of Lati Rinpoche. And maybe to some people out there, this might sound a little backwards or ancient or fanatical, but look, I come from America, and there's some amount of American in me, but there's a lot more Dharma in me and Guru devotion than my American culture. And I realized, through experience, that whatever Lati Rinpoche says, or whatever my Guru tells me, just follow it and just do it. And the Buddhas, and especially Dharma protectors, will agree, because they are the ones that shoulder the burden of the difficulties. The gurus, they're the one that teaches. They're the ones that help us and give us practices, guide us. They are the one that shoulder the burdens. So then, there was a huge furor. Pulong comes in, 300 monks. They were making higher griva chakras. They were making sosodroma chakras. They were making dukkha chakras. And they were making protector strings. And they were making thousands. And, they took paper and wrapped. They took chakras, blessed chakras, example of higher griva, and wrapped it, tied it in strings with mantras and blessings. And then they sewed the cover on each one by hand. And all this was brought over to Lati Rinpoche. All this was brought over to Khyentse Jampa Yeshe Rinpoche. this was brought over to Setrap in trance again, and it was all blessed. So even the strings I have today, we call them chungwa. The strings I have still thousands, and the chakras that I have were totally blessed by these great lamas, and I still have thousands left, thank goodness, and protective Setrap to give to people. And so I had to train up real quick, crash training and initiations, and some other points of the text that I didn't understand, some lamrim, and I trained up real quick with my teacher for months. And then the date was set, and I wrote to my friend Reverend Kuhn, can he sponsor my trip to Malaysia? And I'm going to be going on a tour to raise funds for the monastery, and why I gave him the details. And Reverend Kuhn said, sure. So you know what? Lati Rinpoche called up Idyllic Rinpoche. He called them up on the telephone, and Lati Rinpoche, Idyllic Rinpoche in America, Jewel Heart, knows each other very well. And Lati Rinpoche told Idyllic Rinpoche what I would be doing and to help. So Idyllic Rinpoche called up his students in Malaysia to take me around to the various centers, the various places. So I had my chakras, I had my Dharma text, I had my initiation text, and I had one assistant sent by the monastery, and I was off to Malaysia. And I was all over Malaysia for 3 months. North, south, east, west, central, different centers. Some places I went to, 400 or 500 people showed up. I gave Manjushri initiations. I gave Avalokiteshvara initiations. I gave Dharma talks. I gave teachings on Guru Yoga, on karma, avoidance of negativities, making tatas, water offerings, prostrations. I was all over doing this. And I gathered a group of friends from Malaysia who started following me around and going with me. And after 3 months, we were very successful. And about 6 or 7 of them, flew back to the monastery with me after 3 months. And Lati Rinpoche and everybody were gathered in the hall. And I came in with a tray of offerings and money, with all the Sangha, Lati Rinpoche, Khyentse Rinpoche on the throne, and I came in, and you know what? We offered everything up. And Lati Rinpoche was crying. In front of the whole Sangha, 300 monks, he was crying and crying and crying. And he told me that he's very proud of me, and he's very happy of what I've done, and he rejoices that the Sangha can have a place to stay. And I cried because, to have a High Lama cry from being so happy, it means I did something good. It was very touching. And so the monks commenced to build, and within about 6-7 months, they built a facility that had 36 rooms, 2 stories, and 100 monks can fit. So 100 monks, because of my 3-month tour of Malaysia, was able to get facilities to live in, to stay in, free from snakes, free from weather, free from the conditions. And that's what happened, in short. And while I was in Malaysia, I was requested to start a center, which I did not want to, but I set a center there hoping that Gaden Shatsi Monastery can take care of it and the monks can go back and forth. Well, what happened was that a lot of the Malaysians started coming to monastery, to Gaden, to see me, and started requesting me to come back. And they were saying, like, we helped you to build this facility, and you have to come back and give us teachings. And I consulted my teachers, and they told me to go back. So I started going back. Then they came to see me. Then I started going back to Malaysia. They started seeing me, and I ended up staying here. My teachers felt it was more beneficial for me to be outside of the monastery than in the monastery. I will benefit the monastery more and the teachings of Buddha. And I've been here ever since. And you know what? I miss the monastery very much, and I miss my teachers, and I miss the monks. I miss my house. I miss the greens. I miss the jungle. I miss the solitude. I miss the chanting, and I miss the pujas, and I miss everything about the life in a monastery. And I have never been happy in Malaysia. I have never been happy in Singapore or Hong Kong or any of the countries I visited. I was never happy in America, ever, because I wanted to be in a monastery. Right now in Malaysia, I am not happy. It's not Malaysia's fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just that I really want to be in the monastery. And, sometimes you just need to do what is more beneficial for others, or what my teacher tells me is more beneficial for others, as opposed to what I want. because what I want didn't get me far. What I want comes from deluded views. What I want comes from lack of knowledge. What I want comes from lack of knowledge of Dharma. What I want comes from a lot of negative karma and a lot of negative habituation in this life and a lot of previous lives. So what I want can never compare to what my teacher would know is good for me. That's what I believe with my teachers. And although I'm unhappy here, I do my best to, bring Dharma to others. And these days more through the internet, which I like very much. So I guess I'm trying to share with you how I came to Malaysia, how I feel. And the bottom line is this, is that in life, we rarely get what we want, for better or for worse. In life, sometimes what we want is worse, not better. And I've surrendered myself to the monastery, and I've surrendered myself to my teachers. And I just decided to do what they told me to do. And if you say, well, if you surrender yourself, you shouldn't be unhappy. It's true. But you see, I'm an ordinary person, and I don't have any great attainments. And I would like to be in the mountains or in a monastery. I would like to be in retreats. I would like to do my practice. I don't want to have hundreds of students. I don't want to be responsible for raising funds. I don't want to build, facilities, and I don't want to build a center. I don't want to maintain. I don't want hundreds of people coming to see me. I don't want to be responsible for hundreds of people's spirituality. I don't want to be in charge of a large center. I don't want to be, telling people what to do, or telling them that they're wrong, or they did this wrong, or they think this wrong, or they don't like this, because, consequently you make enemies. I have many students. Many of them have stayed. There are a few students have left. Because when you tell people what they're doing wrong, or when you tell people what you perceive they're doing wrong according to the Dharma, or when you do your duties as a teacher and say this is wrong, this is not right, they're not happy. And sometimes when people are not happy, what they do is they say something that happened that didn't happen, or they misconstrue what was said, or they misconstrue the situation in order to save their faces so that they look good for doing something that wasn't right. That happens, people are people. So I don't like the responsibility of taking care of people in a spiritual sense. I'm not qualified, and you make a lot of enemies. But this is the position that I was put into by my teachers, and I will never be happy being a Dharma teacher for the rest of my life. But basically, that is my destiny. That is what I'm told to do, and this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what I am been given the direction to do. And I guess my faith in the law of cause and effect, and my faith in the Buddha's teachings, and my faith in my Guru and his instructions override my doubts and unhappiness. And that's why I'm kind of still here. That's how I got to Malaysia in short. So I thought I'd share that with everybody here. Well, you can't see the beach anymore. It's kind of dark, but we are right next to the beach in the car, and it's still raining out there. Thanks.